Hey everyone, Mark here at Guitar Heresy channel. What I'm looking at doing today, and I've been kind of mentioning this for a while actually, is coming around to actually creating the enclosures for pickups for the headless 5-string bass that I'm working on. The bit that I suspect will be the bit that's taken the most time is the bit that I've already done at this point, which is actually creating the patterns, the outlines, and indeed the templates for my laser cutter for this particular project. So we've got two 5-string large pole jazz bass pick up internals here. Obviously, because of the way that the springs spread out towards the neck, that means that the pickup for the bridge, as well as being a bit of a hotter wind, because actually the string doesn't move as much there, so you need to create a bit more signal, will actually have those poles spread further apart than the one up, in the bridge, as compared to the one up in the neck. So I've done one of these for the bridge and one for the neck. And as you can see here, I've worked on getting pretty fine tolerances in terms of actually it fitting that standard jazz bass internal with very little kind of wiggle room there. I want it to hold it really sort of solidly, so that there's no potential for generating vibration there really. How much of a problem that is, I really don't know. With it, it'll be sitting on like a foam block, with the bolts then holding it down actually into that pickup cavity. So I suspect that would actually deal with most of that. It will be fairly solidly vibration insulated by that anyway. But obviously, I kind of wanted to make sure that this is as kind of high quality as I can get it, really. Because of that, these are about my fourth set of ones there where I've kind of tweaked and tweaked. I started off and they were a little bit rattly, and then I did some others and actually it was too tight to properly fit on. And yeah, so this is where I've ended up. Now, obviously, this I've cut in a piece of 6mm. I think that's maple, maybe poplar actually. With the to leave the pole pieces exposed, I'm going to need to cut the top of this for 3mm because that's actually how much these pole pieces stand up from the top here, and I want that level at the top. That's the aesthetic choice that I'm going for on that one. And then below that, actually, to get them to cut cleanly, I'm going to use probably 2 layers, possibly 3. That might make it neater, actually. Anyway, and then we'll be assembling the whole pickup enclosure, obviously gluing that up, etc. And then, sanding and finishing and indeed oiling and those sorts of things to create that final enclosure. Now, the wood that I'm going to be making that out of, as I've mentioned a few times actually on this channel, is this, which is a spare piece of the original body blank. The fact that I've got this kind of spalted maple Wenger purple heart, it's a really sort of strong visual statement through the guitar, and actually that being picked up equally on these pickup pieces will obviously work really well. It also means that it's got to line up perfectly, really. If it's a bit out, then actually I think that would be worse than just using one of these woods and actually having that, kind of tone in with the broader how the top looks. If it all lines up, I think that will look really class, but it needs to be spot on. So I need to do that quite carefully. So what I'm in the process of doing here and what I'll be filming today really is preparing this wood so that I've got the pieces that I need to then cut into these sections, which I'll then be assembling to make the final pickup enclosure. Hey, Mark here. Just wanted to do a quick update on looking at the enclosures for this headless 5-string bass that I'm in the process of building. Interesting. I've had a couple of failures, a couple of tries of something different. I've got something that I think will work, and I've also got a plan C coming as well. So plan A was to take the pieces of the body blank that I had left and cut off, kind of nice thin strip at the top of them, and then make that the top of the pickup enclosure. The problem I've run into with that is twofold. Firstly, if I try doing that in terms of just marking out using a drill, stuff like that, I can't get anything like as close to the tolerances that I want. I want this to fit together so that it's kind of, fitted in there really neatly. There's no rattle, there's nothing there that could get in the way of actually that pickup, kind of giving a really good pure signal. And to do that, I need to do it mechanically. I don't have CNC wood machines. I've mentioned that before. I do have a laser cutter, so my plan was to actually then kind of cut stuff, and then I can actually do the level of precision I need. You see, the holes for the actual pole pieces are 9.4 millimeters. On the bridge, they need to be 8.1 millimeters apart. On the neck, they need to be 7.4 or 7.6. But we're talking there fractions of a millimeter in terms of getting that really, really accurate. And the problem I had when I tried cutting is that, it's that spalting again. Now, run into this issue in that we're looking at the kind of machining the cutouts for the bridge pieces. But actually, one of the things that I'd really underestimated when starting this project was just how different the strength of the wood between the areas that are outlined. That's kind of created by decay in the wood here. So this will be much, much softer than this wood here and much more prone to burn. So even with the top actually kind of coated in water briefly, so that it's starting off with that, this just caused huge burnouts. And as you can see here, this hole cut perfectly neatly in the Wenger, and then these were actually, it was meant to be outside that, actually, it wasn't going anywhere. Plan 2, kind of plan B, I guess, was then to kind of cut where that was a little bit lower in the body, where I was just catching the top wood, but then it was backed onto the mahogany that forms the body of this guitar. And actually that looked like it would work for a while. It cut out, as you can see, reasonably evenly. But as you can also see, as soon as I started just sanding that, given there was that quite thin layer on there, again, this area of more decayed wood in the spalting just kind of almost clumped off. So even a very light sanding, it was through to the baseboard there. So basically, this ain't going to work. In terms of what I have in front of me, I cannot do that with the spalted top to the pickup enclosures. So a couple of other thoughts occurred to me. The one that I've got here, and this is actually a partly finished one, is to use the slightly lower in the body. So this is the mahogany, Wenger and Purple Heart, and the mahogany that actually lower in the body uses. Interestingly, when I lay that across as well, at the moment I haven't got the full colour to that, as you can see with the Purple Heart being paler there. But that's not a bad colour match, actually, to the non-decayed parts of the spalted maple on the top here. Interesting. Now, with this one, I have, I kind of cut that, glued that up overnight, and I've sanded like half of it to give you an idea of actually how that comes out and actually then what we can achieve. So that's the sanded side of that, and I sanded that round there. Here is how it is just after cutting with a laser cutter and then gluing together. So we've got various bits of glue residue there, the discolouring from actually having cut that with the laser cutter, etc, etc. And obviously I cleaned up inside that a little bit as well. I don't know if anyone else does something similar to this, but when I'm trying to get inside something, this is just like a cheap wooden like coffee spoon, you know, with some sandpaper glued to it. I do things like that quite often to kind of get in there to actually kind of neatly do things. This is the one, let me see, I think that was the neck one. I think this is the bridge one, possibly the other way around. So as you can see, I've used a nicely kind of finished surface for the underside of that. That will need sanding smooth, and obviously that all the way around is discoloured and what have you. So a bit of work to do on that. But actually, that's looking where I've done that. Getting dusty fingerprints on that now from the ash on that one. Where I've done that, actually, I think that has potential. Plan C, which I'm also kind of going to do before I make a final decision on this, is to use to layer things horizontally. So I've got some quite thin Wenger ordered, and similarly Purple Heart 3mm in both cases. And the idea is to top that with the Wenger, which particularly given that we've got the Wenger on the fretboard here, and there's a big chunk of that, I'm thinking that it might look quite good. So Wenger, stripe of Purple Heart, and then the paler maple. You see, this is spalted maple, but actually kind of look better with a little bit of colour. This actually is poplar, so I may end up remaking these. I've got spares of the wood of that, so I may end up remaking this before I use a final one, even if I use this this approach to it. So yeah, that's where we're at. I will get these kind of done as they are. I will then also, as I say, kind of do the other version of this, and then I can have a compare between the two and see which I like the look of better. Hope you're having a good day. Bye. Hey, I just wanted to show kind of work in progress briefly. That's the bridge pickup that I'd half sanded before. I've just sanded it all the way around, and that one's now oiled. Neck pickup I've just finished sanding, and I'm about to put some oil on. At this point I'm just using boiled linseed oil because, as I say, I'm not sure if I'm keeping these as are, but I want to see how they look when they're actually kind of got some oil finish on them. I've got to say, oiling wood, I know I've said this before, it's one of the most wonderful things about working with wood at all, because the grain kind of pops out and the whole thing just looks much, much richer and nicer. So let's just, can you see how that really changes everything? Awesome. Let's put a little bit on that side, and then let's just hold that there. And first coat of oil I always tend to put on really thick, and then give it 10 minutes, and then polish any loose stuff off so it gets a chance to really soak into the grain. And that's certainly what I did with that one there. So at the moment you'll see that this one, whilst kind of, you know, glossy and oiled, this one's looking much shinier. As I say, I'll give that 10 minutes and then give that a rub back. Doing that a few times over several days really, really helps kind of, you know, I think anything wooden to look really good. Yeah, quite, you know, I'm liking these, and they kind of fit everything really nicely. They look good. Yeah, it's nice. Bye. Hey, Mark here. Quick update on the pickup enclosures. The ones that I've kind of had oiled yesterday look lovely, actually. They look really nice. The only problem I've run into with those is that actually with the oil, obviously it kind of darkens the wood up, and actually with some woods it kind of does that more than others. If I take this and I compare it to the body of the guitar that it's going to be used for, whilst it matches really nicely as far as the Wenger and Purple Heart goes, This is a little bit dark for that spalted maple top. I kind of oiled a bit of this just to kind of be able to compare it effectively, to have a little look at that. And whilst it picks up with the colour on the body, obviously, that kind of works, but I'm not convinced that's as good as it's going to get, you know. So I've done a couple of other things. I'm still waiting for the thinner Wenger and Purple Heart, where I was going to do that horizontally, to turn up, and I definitely want to see how that works. But the other thing that I did was have another go at doing a top with actually the spalted wood on it. I did that by taking one of my few remaining pieces of top with the spalted wood, and then sandwiching that in between two pieces of maple. And actually, then once that was kind of clamped and glued and left overnight, then cutting that quite finely down the middle so that I had two halves, which had the spalted wood, etc., on one side of them, and the maple that I'd used as backing on the other side. So I've sanded those down quite carefully to the right sort of thickness, wet them and cut them, and with quite a thin layer of that spalting on there, it's done. It's not perfect, but not badly. So this is how it is, having going on to the maple backing and then maple actually for the body of the enclosure. And obviously this is quite messy because it hasn't been sanded or anything yet. Interesting where actually, again, with that kind of very soft part of the spalted wood, it marks really, really easily. So this might work out really well, it might not, but I'm going to kind of sand these back up and get it to a point where I can really see what's the best we can do of that approach to it with that fully matching wood for the top there. The other thing that I've done, I'd kind of refined that design a little bit. I've made it a little bit smaller in terms of the shrinking the ends in a little bit. They were kind of wider than they needed to be on this earlier version of it. So I wound that back in a little bit just to minimise just how far across the body these will be spreading. And I've made some obviously kind of template on the laser cutter for cutting those out, but I also took the time to cut some templates for routing. If you can imagine on this, that's the neck one. I've actually scored it not only with a centre line but also to the width of this band down the centre of here. This totals up as 35mm, and actually this being able to just line that up with those lines already on there actually makes it so much easier to get accurate. I think we'll be looking at something like there and there. These, by the way, because the bits that you actually cut out obviously are going to exist as separate pieces, I also just put the holes in there so that when I've routed the body, actually I'll be able to drop this into that routing piece and then use those two holes as the pilot holes for drilling the holes for the threaded inserts that the bits that hold the pickups are going to thread into. So that's where we're at. Oh, a final point, actually. I don't think I'd ever shown you how these started off. That's some in their standard housings, really standard jazz bass housing. But obviously I just made sure I got ones that where that kind of was something that they would come out from, because I wanted to do a kind of custom housing as a sort of halfway step to doing completely custom pickups. But these were a design and a type that I liked. I may change the pickup for the neck one, actually. These are ceramic magnets at the moment, which work quite well for some things, and I think will work really well in the bridge. But obviously I've got a same sized Alnico 5 magnet, which I'm expecting to put into the neck position on this guitar. Other than that, it's looking nice. I still want to see how it is with the Wenger topped and then Purple Heart and then Maple, kind of almost the stacked side. But until that turns up and I'm able to make that up, I'm going to finish making these up as well as I can. And then we're going to be able to see, really, is it best to go with the mahogany Wenger and Purple Heart, the Spalted Maple and Purple Heart Wenger, or indeed those, but reversed sort of to be a horizontal stack. Yeah, all interesting stuff. See you soon. Hello, quick update to the pickup enclosures. Actually, that's worked out really nicely where it's used the surface wood, really thin layer of that on top of maple, and then the more substantial maple for the actual body of it. I will zoom in on that to give you an idea of kind of looking at it. But particularly, I think it's important to look at that in context with the body. Let's just arrange them roughly where they're going to be. And then bring the camera over so you can see that in more detail. Not perfectly perfect, but they're pretty good. I think, again, because of the fragility of the wood, where we're talking about spalted wood, I think it's very hard to get that perfect. So I'm still going to make a pair of these with the alternate that I talked about, you know, in terms of using Wenger for the top, a thin layer of Purple Heart so that you've got that stripe that matches here, and then maple. But there's a few things definitely. The maple matches the paler parts of the wood, which it would because this is spalted maple, better than the poplar did. There's that slight green tinge that you get to poplar that kind of is interesting, but it does, you know, it makes it quite distinct. Where we had on this one that much darker kind of colour for the mahogany, sapele mahogany, I think that one is. You know, this really does match much more interestingly. Yeah, and as you can see, as I say, I kind of installed those in. Obviously, they kind of very slightly do, so I have to push them in slightly to get it correctly. But that mounts really nicely with the actual pickup. Yeah, quite happy with that. Yeah, I'll test the other type, but definitely think that I may well be going with those. Yeah, okay. Hello, quick postscript to this video. Today is Saturday, so a couple of days on from the last clips of the video on here. I was going to wait until I made the alternative housings and then make a decision and all make that part of the same video. But actually, I'm going to put that in a separate one because it's only today that these have turned up. So this is a much narrower little sheet of Purple Heart, and similarly with the Wenger. These are the ones that I was waiting on to be able to make those kind of horizontally striped kind of housings. And as of tomorrow, I'm going to be stuck into another project, which for the next week or so is likely to take up all of my available sort of time and energy. So actually, I will have to come back to this probably in a couple of weeks' time. So there will be a part 2, and I'll talk a little bit as well about actually routing the bits into the body of the guitar and fitting these. As we stand at the moment, these are looking good. You know, my kind of revised plan A, when I went back to using the spalted maple there, this has come up nicely. I think give this a little while to kind of, for the oil to kind of set off a little bit, and actually use something like True Oil, which is a much more strongly polymerizing oil. So it's got a much firmer hold of that and protection on the surface of it, and I think those are entirely usable. I'm going to do the same with these and actually compare before making a final decision of which version of the housing I'm going to use. So look out for part 2. And as I say, I've got some interesting stuff coming up, really kind of starting tomorrow, looking at another project, a pair of projects actually, that I'm going to be working on. So hope to see you for them. Bye.